The Giles Files is sponsored by BetterHelp. Affordable professional online therapy from any device, text, chat, and video. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Join the 2 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with a BetterHelp therapist. And here's a special offer for Giles Files listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Giles Files. That's betterhelp.com/Giles Files. And thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. It's the Giles Files Season 3. More Boffo shows, that's a guarantee. Nancy Giles and producer Nancy Wyatt, we got opinions, we ain't keeping quiet. On the Giles Files Season 3. Yeah. You look good.
I have just a light touch of makeup on, as I told Nancy. A little bit of base and a little bit of smoky eye.
Well, it looks good because, smoky eye and lipstick just don't go.
No, they don't. They don't.
Good choice. Good choice.
I always do either or.
Well,
you look like you got a haircut.
And I got a haircut yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I shaved for this and, things I normally don't do ever.
We are flattered. Thank you.
We are. And in the words of Carly Simon, you're so vain, you probably think this podcast is about you.
Well,
Don't you? And it is. It's all about my pal, John Markus, an award-winning writer and producer of The Cosby Show, The Larry Sanders Show, the Al Franken series Lateline, and a lot more. This sit-down is about the funny. We get into the craft of television comedy, from creating a show to the science of laughter, live and canned, and the brilliant and complicated legends that John Markus learned from, Bill Cosby, Garry Shandling, even a very significant rodent?
Here I come to save the day. That means that Mighty Mouse is on the way.
How do you come up with a storyline for a mouse?
It was Mighty Mouse, right?
It was Mighty Mouse. Did they tell you and you just have to do the dialogue? Did you have to come up with the whole storyline?
You had to pitch the beginning, middle, and end of a story. It was a very small animation studio in Sherman Oaks. And I remember the head of the studio's name was Lou Scheimer. And Lou was like a small-time studio boss. And so I was brought in by the late Sam Simon to write for Mighty Mouse. And I had to pitch episodes. And finally they say yes to one. And then you develop it into a story. And then you'd write it. And I lasted about 8 months there. And I remember getting a script that came in. And I got called into Lou Scheimer's office.
Uh-oh.
And he said, bring your script.
Oops.
And I know. And he said, open it to page 24. And he said, that line in the middle, Mighty would never say that. And I got let go.
Oh, what was the line?
Oh, I can't remember the line.
So ends the adventure of the Mouse of Tomorrow. He's seen his duty, and he'd done it.
Sitcoms that we like. What are you watching now?
I'm going to be such a disappointment to everybody. First of all, I think I can't comment on everything because I don't watch everything. I'll try stuff out, but I'm tough. I mean, it's got to appeal to my character writing, the side of me that values writing true characters. I think people who binge, I think it's almost like a form of intoxication. They're like, somehow the binging gets them to the point where my gates are totally open to like this. And they do, because they're investing a lot. I don't know. The show that I think is one of the funniest shows on TV is Succession.
Succession?
Makes me laugh out loud many times. Crazy good in places. Crazy good.
Wait, Succession is the family drama where
the
it's
Murdoch
kind of like
family.
Right. Oh, okay.
These incidents are symptomatic of a foundational sickness within our father and his company.
Don't he use that tongue prettier than a $20 whore?
He's a central player in a rotten cabal that has basically eaten the heart out of American democracy.
Rotten Cabal is a good name for a band.
Oh my Lord! The casting is genius, and I got to give a shout out to Francine Maisler, who cast the original pilot of Succession, because she's got to go. She also cast Larry Sanders.
She's a good lady. I've auditioned for her.
So that show stands out, where the writing is superb and the casting, it all works. I think there are parts of The Crown that are really hilarious. I love The Crown. I just think Peter Morgan is like a genius of some kind. Because I love The Queen, the movie The Queen that Helen Mirren did. Mm-hmm. That really, and hilarious in places. And The Crown also, especially when Philip's involved, when they're one of these actors that have portrayed Philip, really good and funny. And so I guess I'm not really like a long form person, but those shows stand out. Name some shows that you guys watch.
Reruns. I like Mom. I think that's
Mom
hilarious.
with Allison Janney?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the great comic acters around.
I think that's wonderful. It holds up. I mean, if the episode comes on that I've seen 3 times, I'm still laughing. I also like 2.5 Men.
Well, it's funny you're picking both Chuck Lorre shows that are throwback sitcoms and they're done in front of an audience.
Yeah.
I know. And there is something about that being done in front of a live audience. It gives it this rhythm and this energy that, not to take away from the filmed ones, but
there's no true test of what you're doing when you don't have an audience there. You can all in the room agree this will be funny, and it's odd, I should say, because the show that begat all the single camera film shows is Larry Sanders. Larry Sanders was done without an audience, unless they were doing the actual talk show, but it was 90% without the audience. And it was funny because Garry was a comedy writer and dark in his sensibilities, and he had funny people on the show. But the shows that came after it, I don't find to have the same octane level of laughs. Mm-hmm. And, again, here comes Grandpa. Honestly, every time I go to get my hair cut, I walk up to the colorist and say, come on, isn't it time?
No, don't.
I was once going back to a high school reunion, and I said, okay, I'm not doing my hair, okay, but I want my beard color. And I think the colorist at this particular salon was on drugs.
What happened?
I had the first dye job ever and the last dye job ever of my life. And, it's all made me very, very sympathetic to what women go through, because it's so hard and expensive what you guys do.
Yeah.
I get home and it looks like I'm about to go on stage. This thing is jet black.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
I look like, Pavarotti in the old opera, and it's jet black, and I'm supposed to get on a plane the next day, right? And I call the salon. This teaches me a lesson for going to a salon in the first place. My dad used to go to a gas station to get his hair cut. It was $4, and he'd say, you boys are full of shit. This is what I got. And, of course, because she was a drug addict, they had to find her. She was gone. They got her in a bar. So I said, you got to get a hold of her, because this is an emergency. And, she's barely together, but she was together enough to go like, oh, it's too dark. I was worried about that. And I said, just help me fix it. And she said, you got vodka and lemons in your refrigerator? And I said, yes. She said, mix them together, 50-50, and just start putting it on, and the color will lighten up. And it did. It did.
Well, damn.
Now, that could be because that's all she drinks after hours. but it worked. So color makes me nervous. So I haven't gotten color, but
yeah, good.
Not yet.
That's good. We like, yeah. Go ahead, Nance.
When you were talking about sitcoms being in front of an audience, Chuck Lorre on one of his cards after the show talks about the different kinds of laugh. Like sometimes there's a sympathy laugh because there's a pause and the audience thinks, oh, we're supposed to laugh here. And he was just saying, and as a comedy writer, you know the different laughs. It was
you definitely know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know them. And Chuck would know them better than anybody because God bless him, he's still doing it. He's still having audiences in. Of course, the shows you both mentioned they're only in reruns now, right?
Right.
Boy, they're very, very few. Let's see.
What do you think of Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Oh, my God. I'm so glad you brought that up. This last season, I mean, I love the first 4 or 5 seasons, and I think it's so hard to maintain a real quality comedy. It's so hard. And I think it faltered here and there after 4 or 5 or 6 seasons. And then miraculously, last season was one of the best ones they ever did. Mm-hmm. It's like this thing got completely revived as far as its funny bones and what it, and it was outrageous. I mean, I was offended in a couple places. And I liked everything, but I thought, you can't do that. But he does it.
Yeah. And he does that also, filmed no audience. But it somehow has that electricity. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's because it's really improvised. He knows how to pick the right people. Right. Susie Essmans and the, Jeff Garland's and people who come in and they go, there are no scripts to the show. And I had heard, it could be wrong, that Larry really didn't want to spend the money on written by credits. When they were starting out, it's like, well, wait a minute. I'm not doing a script, so I'm not paying that money. And I don't want to give people credit for stuff because we're going to make it up. And so they start their episodes with an outline. They don't.
Wow.
It's not written dialogue.
I'm thinking about the money aspect, though. If it's not written, if it's kind of written by everybody and improvised by everybody, like, does anybody get a writer's credit on that show? They just don't have one.
He gives out story by credits.
Story by.
They sit down, they concoct the story.
Right, okay.
There was an early review of Curb that I found interesting. It was done by an English critic. It said, this is the first time in comedy that the big guy has picked on the little guy. And that's what he does in the show. He picks on Girl Scouts and he picks on, people that park your car in the garage. And he just picks on people who are not as powerful as him.
It's true. It's really true. And that normally doesn't work.
He has said in interviews that what's the difference between him, Larry David, him, and the real him? He said the Larry David in Curb is the person I want to be.
Holy shit.
What's going on over here? Shouldn't she be moving up? Isn't that how a line works? Yeah. I don't like a big gap in the line. You want to feel like a line is moving. Otherwise, psychologically, it's bad. Yeah. Right? I'm languishing back here. Maybe I'll say something. Don't. Hey. Excuse me. Would you mind moving up on the line a bit?
No, I'm good. Maybe just worry about yourself.
Well, I mean, you're on the line. You have a responsibility as a person on the line to keep the line moving. And you're not holding up your end of the bargain.
Would you tell somebody that was a white man to just move up?
Yeah, in a second.
Sure, of course.
Oh, so this is racial? Is that what this is?
Sir, you know what? I'm going to actually need you to get in the back of the line.
What?
Or,
are you kidding?
Or you could leave. Thank you.
Back of the line. Get to the back of the line.
You have to leave.
Racial?
My other favorite is V.
Oh, Veep, I love.
Jesus! Dan, did your boyfriend know anything about this?
I was trying to use Jonah for intelligence.
That's like trying to use a croissant as a fucking dildo.
I thought that...
No. Let me be more clear. It doesn't do the job, and it makes a fucking mess.
Such a major force and so likable and so hilarious. And she can be mean and you like her.
I know.
Oh, wow.
Really something.
She comes from the Dreyfus Fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
And aren't they related to the Rothschilds? I feel like I'm spreading an urban myth here. So
no, I believe
please
you're right.
forgive me if that's incorrect, but
I believe that's right.
So God love her for like, she could just have kicked back her whole life and lived a life of debauchery. And instead she robustly pursued this craft and developed her talent. And, she is one of the exceptions to my rule of thumb, which is I've never met an heir I like. I've never met one.
Yeah, you know what? I guess she's the most wealthy person I've ever met. And she was, and I didn't know about the Dreyfus Fund stuff then. I just knew her as Julia. And she was very, very friendly.
You're a doctor and Mom's a lawyer. And you're both successful and everything, and that's great. But maybe I was born to be a regular person and have a regular life. If you weren't a doctor, I wouldn't love you less because you're my dad. And so, instead of acting disappointed because I'm not like you, maybe you can just accept who I am and love me anyway because I'm your son.
Theo, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
You guys are taking me down memory lane here. And it's a story that involves Mr. Cosby, but I'll tell it anyway.
All right. Nancy and I have talked about this at length. Part of my issue with some of the reaction to Cosby is it feels like a lot of young people who feel betrayed in a way that like kids do. And like, he wasn't a perfect person. I don't know. I'm not quite ready to write him off.
Look, I'm going to separate you from your contributions, and this is going to sound crazy, but a lot of great minds do weird shit.
I think that the ongoing discussion we've had for the past few years about the art versus the artist, are important to definitely talk about. But I mean, I always come back to the art and the complications of, as you said earlier, Nancy, the complications of these minds that live in a creative realm that is so strong, the other parts of their brain atrophy. The sensitivity aspects of who they are, that's gone. Because if you live a life where no one says no to you, there's gonna be trouble. And that's what seems to happen, that people are unfettered and their egos grow into narcissism, which then sort of like starts to rot. And then people are hurt. And people get into positions of being hurt. And it's a lot to look at and a lot to cover.
It is a lot.
And it's complicated for me because for 6 years, that's who I got my approval from.
Right.
Around and had expectations of the level of work. And he was so smart, at times I thought he might be psychic. He was that brilliant. And two things I'll never forget is the first season of the show, my mother came for a visit. And here I am on this #1 show, and Mom comes for a visit, and she wants to be on the set, and she wants to meet him. And he was so good with moms. This is a hard thing to say. People will be hearing this and go like, what is this guy talking about? He loved moms. He respected what moms went through. That was part of his act. But he really had those feelings, I think. And he gave my mom a big hug. Like, I really looked at that hug and said, really, Bill? It's my mom. He gave her a big hug, and then he pointed at me and he said, Ruth, when you had this one, God said he's for Cosby.
Wow.
And my mom, that meant the world to her. Boy, did she love that. But then year 5, she came back to visit. And we were in his dressing room for a brief couple of minutes, and she wanted to thank him for all that he did for me. which I didn't love because, like, what was I doing for him, Mom, really? But that's what she said. And he said, Ruth, I'll tell you what, the minute he stops giving me stuff I like, he's out. So that was an interesting twist and an interesting personality, that he had been on a number one show for 6 years and things changed. It was completely the other side of the coin of God saying he's for Bill.
Yeah.
It was like,
there
he could get the guillotine at any minute.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Is that sort of what happened? I mean, I know the show was number one. Well, it was 5 years or 6 years running. Or was the sixth year the year that it began to falter?
It was the seventh year because I was gone.
But you went on to do Different World.
I co-created with Carmen Finestra and Matt Williams in 1987. That's when we wrote the pilot for Different World. And so it was running.
While Cosby was on, right?
Yeah. Well, we were on, and then it continued after we were gone. I think it did 7 years on NBC.
Right.
Why did Lisa leave?
I believe that Lisa and Marissa Tomei, they really altered the premise of the show in the first and second year. They began to change it because the premise that we had written and the premise that Bill had been part of with us was, what would it be like for Lisa to go to a black college and to have a white roommate who was one of the only white students at a black college? That was the premise of Different World.
Right.
Right. And Lisa and Marissa departed after the first season.
Just going back a little bit, what was the reason that you ended up leaving the Cosby Show? Because of that edict that he said to your mom? I mean, was it close to that?
I think that only the revelations of the last 4 years have really filled in some pieces for me. And I do believe that my efforts to just do the best show every week, in which I was willing to fall on my sword, just anything to get this show where it needed to be, included a wish that only qualified actors appear on the show. And that got me into trouble.
Did you have a walk-on, Nancy?
No, I was an extra one time. I was an extra in some dance scene or something like that. But John, you were on the show.
Yes, I was on an episode of the show. Be hard to recognize me because I played Louis Pasteur.
The Louis Pasteur?
I think Bill decided it was time to torture the writers. Because he said, I want you guys to play this this sort of dream sequence, and I want you to be famous figures from history talking to Raven.
Wow, right.
She was very young and explaining greatness to her. And you, he said, are going to be Louis Pasteur. And that was 3.5 hours of makeup.
That sounds like fun.
It actually was fun, except you can hear one of the worst French accents ever.
And you say penicillin can cure all kinds of infectious diseases?
That's what I'm saying. We'll call that comedy.
Yeah, comedy with a K. After that, Different World was still running, and then you did Late Line with Al, and then you stepped in, I think, the last couple of years of Larry Sanders. Is that right?
That's right. I stepped in for a season and a half of Larry Sanders.
I love that. I'm sorry. I love that show.
I love that
show.
It was great.
And the style was before its time, and everybody's doing that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the favorite lines I ever wrote for the show. It was a great show to write for. And Garry was actually the first person to pay me for jokes when I had moved to LA.
Oh, really?
So Garry had discovered me. We spent a lot of time together back in that period. But there's a scene in one of my episodes where the show budget gets out. And everyone's looking at what everyone else makes. It's a huge disaster. And Hank's assistant gets in a fight with Beverly, who is Larry's assistant. Beverly, is making $100 more a week.
Right.
Hank's assistant. And she says, well, you see what the things I do for Larry? You see them. And he says to her, have you ever had to pick through Great Dane shit looking for an engagement ring?
Oh. Now, how'd you come up with that? Was that
I don't know.
Personal? Was that from real life? I know, right? Wow.
Oh, Larry. No, I really don't think you want to send this.
Just fax it.
Bruce, I'm sorry. Would you excuse us just for a second?
What is wrong?
You want me to send this to Tom Shales?
Yes.
Dear dumb fuck.
Keep going.
Larry, I am sorry, but I can't send this.
Fine, then I'll fax it myself.
Oh, you don't even know how to use the fax machine, remember?
Oh, really? I'll turn it on, stick it in, and just hope for the best. It'll be like sex.
Gary was, I think, a true artist. He thought constantly about the truth in his comedy and authenticity in his comedy, and which made him kind of out of the realm of mainstream Hollywood comedy. Gary was like, there has to be honesty here. And almost made him sick, I think, his pursuit of excellence. Aww. I think it was part of what ultimately was his undoing. I mean, he was dealing with some real physical things. But I think that the town and the world, even though Larry Sanders was about sending up Hollywood and sending up the cowardice and hypocrisy, but I mean, he was there, and he was buddies with Warren Beatty, and he wrote with Warren and hung out, and famous people wanted to be around him. Mm-hmm. Famous people loved him, and he had his pick of people who wanted to be on the show. He would never ask himself. He had that rule, and he just didn't want to get involved.
And maybe didn't want to get rejected, God forbid,
And didn't want to get rejected. I'll never forget when we came up with the episode involving Sally Field on the Larry Sanders Show. Mm-hmm. I think it's called Where is the Love? It's all about the approval we need as performers. And we wrote a script that had profanity in it, of course, and had her talking about her Oscar speech, where she said, you love me, you really love me. Very honest.
I wanted to own the moment. The first time I won the Oscar, I was so scared. It was like out-of-body experience. I don't remember anything that happened. I might as well not have been there.
I can imagine.
Second one, I wanted to own it. So I said what I felt. That's what I felt. Was that sickening?
Tom Shales just walked in. He's just walked in.
Sent her the script, and I thought, like, this is almost too good to be true if she wants to do all this. And I got the phone call from Sally saying, I'll do it on one condition. And I said, tell me. And she said, can I trade 2 motherfuckers for a cocksucker? I wonder if Sally would even remember that or, confess that was the story. But I thought, okay, we're good.
Okay, we've got some. You've already been way generous, and we both were like,
let's keep going.
Okay, so we've got some flash questions for you.
So does that mean I need to answer them like that?
Well, you can answer them without thinking about them, and then follow up with a quick why, because we want to know why you think that. Okay.
Okay. This will be like my therapy.
All right.
Austin Powers or Maxwell Smart?
Austin Powers just makes me laugh like crazy. I think Mike Myers just had a grip on such great comedy and also compelling, funny people, because he's coming up with all this stuff pretty much. I mean, he had some writers working. I mean, he had the Turners do Wayne's World, and the Turners worked on a couple of his movies. So he worked with gifted writers, but when you think about all the kind of catchphrases that Austin Powers was doing, look at the opening credits of that movie. and the dancing and the
Just based on the opening credits. I used to pray that I could just be in one of his opening credits. That's all. Just with a great wig and doing some great Austin Powers dances. That's all.
I know. And, I love Get Smart, and had the wonderful talents of Buck Henry and Mel Brooks. And it was an original piece, but it was canned laughter. And still was great, and we wouldn't miss it as kids. But again and again and again, I can watch Austin Powers.
Hey, baby. Shall we shag now or shall we shag later? That's just groovy, baby.
All right, Nance, your turn.
Okay, Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle?
Not going to choose.
Okay.
Why?
Two comic. I would say I'm not going to choose because both of these people are like pathfinding comedians and are explosively funny and different. Yeah. And Dave Chappelle has chosen to stay in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which is near where I'm from. And hats off to him for having a farm and staying back in Ohio. And Chris is just like explosive. They're different. They're really different. So I'm sorry to not choose.
Yeah, that's all right. Here's an easier one. Water or vodka?
If I had lived in Manhattan in the 50s and 60s, if I gotten to live in that period of time and gone to Toots Shores and gone to the Stork Club, I'd be drinking vodka every night. I'd be a mess. I'd be gone by now. I'd be drinking and smoking and having the best fucking time. And now I can't do a goddamn thing. So, yeah, your question was a trigger for me. Damn trigger. Don't ask me that.
Okay. Nancy Wyatt?
Let me see. I'm going down the list. Oh, Mary Tyler Moore or Murphy Brown?
Mary Tyler Moore.
I
do not hesitate.
Oh, no.
And Candace,
sorry, but it has to be some.
But Mary is, first of all, with Mary, you're looking at two classic comedies, not one. And and as a, and she brought me through my adolescence. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
No.
I loved that show. That show started when I was in 5th grade and ended, I think, when I graduated high school. I mean, it was like the perfect formative years of my life and made me, independent, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me stop talking. Okay, how's this? Afros or cornrows or dreadlocks?
Are we talking about men versus women versus...
You take that any way you want.
I marvel at the time spent doing any of those. I don't mean to give you a political answer, but I can't help but it turns my head when I'm walking here in Manhattan and I see, and aren't dreadlocks kind of achieved by just not washing your hair?
Well, it's like letting your hair kind of, sort of do its own thing. It's not that you don't wash it, but you don't untangle it.
You don't untangle it.
So and the hair starts to lock.
Okay,
yeah, and you twist
and it starts to lock. I will go with dreadlocks then.
All right.
Yeah. I once was shooting a barbecue show in Reno, Nevada, and I had no idea what Burning Man was.
Oh.
and Burning Man had ended, and all these young people reeking of patchouli were coming out of the desert to the casinos. And I thought I found all of them sexually exciting. Men, women, young men and women, all with dreadlocks and every color of person, and it was exciting to me. So dreadlocks is like the first of like, electric sort of tuning fork vibrating moment for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Nancy, you want another?
Mel Brooks or Gary Marshall?
Mel Brooks. I'm sorry.
Why?
Gary,
Tell us why.
Mel Brooks, because Mel is really a founding father of comedy. His face should be on the Rushmore of comedy. He has been the funniest, the longest, and he did not creatively steer Laverne and Shirley. So it's Mel all the way.
It's alive! Okie doke. Count Basie or the Funk Brothers?
I need to listen to more Funk Brothers, but I am a Count Basie freak.
And why is that?
Because he represents, I played in big bands until I was in my early 30s.
What did you play?
I played woodwind, so I played tenor and clarinet. And I had a swing band in high school, and then I was in the Stanford Jazz Band, and then I played jazz when I got out of college and moved to LA. Count Basie is, to me, the most dynamic arrangements and tightest band and swingingest band. And his piano playing was so elegant and simple and straightforward. And I am a freak for their guitar player during the peak years, a guitarist named Freddie Green.
Freddie Green?
Freddie Green. He played a big body guitar. He only played 2 notes at a time. And he hiked his strings high up off the body, and he could compete with that big band. He could compete with it, and he was the fulcrum that drove this thing ahead.
On guitar, he could compete with the big... Wow. That's some sound.
I'm such a devotee of him. I mean, he died a long time ago, but I remember one day thinking, I'm going to get his widow on the phone and see if any of his guitars are laying.
And?
She hung up on me. I only get those calls every week from some impertinent young asshole wanting to know about are Freddie's guitars for sale. I'd have hung up on me too.
And listen, that puts 2 of your picks together because Mel Brooks put Count Basie in Blazing Saddles.
Sure did.
How can you not love that?
Imagine, that's a joke where you laugh in the room and then someone's got to fucking do it. You got to get that band out there.
Right in the desert.
You got to sit them outside. They don't want to be outside. They don't like being outside, those guys. I mean, but it's one of those jokes like, are we really going to go with this? But it was very funny. And, of course, they were playing April in Paris.
Of course. Yeah. And then you've got Cleavon Little in that Gucci outfit and just as beautiful as... Oh, yeah.
Oh, this one's good. Okay. Jack Parr or Johnny Carson?
We got real apples and oranges there. I find Johnny harder to watch the older I get. And my dream beginning in high school through college was to be a writer on The Tonight Show with Johnny. And I was willing to go to Burbank. I wanted to become a page. Mm-hmm. So I was literally driving out to Burbank and I remember the name of this lady that was in charge of pages and stuff. She just tormented me constantly with, well, maybe. I never got the page job. And then I started bringing stuff out to Johnny, and whether it got read or not, I don't know. But Johnny was a real ideal in comedy, and I wish I'd spent a little time with him. I didn't get to. And Jack Parr just used to. I love those conversations now, but he was a little annoying to watch.
Oh, really?
Is that unfair?
No, my father used to say almost the same thing. Jack Parr, he's nutty, kiddo. But now that he really had a talk show where people talked to each other, and it wasn't just showing the film clips or doing the bits. I saw this doc on him probably 10 or 15 years ago, and I just fell in love with him. I thought he was great.
It was real adult conversation, and it also spoke of New York to me. Like I love watching To Tell the Truth and What's My Line because I fantasize about what it would have been like. And this goes back to your vodka or water question. I fantasize about being a panelist on one of those shows, and boy, life would have been good. You would have been out there, having what you want to eat, drinking and smoking and staying out, and
every time you say that, it's drinking with N apostrophe, smoking, hanging
out. Yeah. Had you put Dave Letterman's name in there, everyone would go away. He's, to me, it.
Oh, you know what else? I think you really get to see his interviewing skills now on the news show. He's fantastic.
He is fantastic, and it depends on the guest sometimes how good he is. But last night I watched his interview with Billie Eilish and her brother.
Oh, I've seen clips of that where she talks about having Tourette's and whatnot. Yeah,
they show it.
Wow.
They show because she wants to talk about. She's pretty. She's a one of a kind, and so's her brother. And they were raised right. They were raised by good parents. I think they were raised to be themselves, and they were taught to talk about themselves when they needed to, and encourage creatively. And I would not have needed to go into therapy had I had her parents. I wouldn't have needed it. I would have saved so much money that I would have given it to my parents. Did you know that the writer David Mamet sued his father for the price of his therapy?
No.
Really? And did he win?
He won.
What?
A judge awarded him the money.
I think he's a Trumpy. Now he's totally gone that way.
Really?
He's borderline QAnon, I think. He's.
Oh my God!
You can't write those kind of plays and be an easy person to be around.
I know. Can I just ask a follow-up question about the canned laughter? How did they do that? When I go back and I look at those comedies, and they're filmed and there's no audience and it's just silent. I mean, was the crew laughing? Did they how did they do that?
One of the inventors of this form was a guy named Jack Douglas. And it's still being done by his son, Bobby Douglas, who I've used on a few shows. And as I remember, used to come to the recording sessions in a red Ferrari.
Oh, my God.
It is a good business to be considered the best in.
Holy mackerel.
And what the good ones are really, really good at is it doesn't feel false. Unless you got this kind of obnoxious showrunner who's saying, give me a bigger laugh there. And Woody put that? Tony Roberts was that character.
Right.
Max, you realize how immoral this all is?
Max, I got a hit series.
I know, but you're adding fake laughs.
Home so early. Arnie, give me a tremendous laugh here, Tommy. Do the show live in front of an audience.
Right, but nobody laughs at it because the jokes aren't funny.
Yeah, well, that's why this machine is dynamite. Arnie, you better lie.
Yeah, I need give me a guffaw there. But what Bobby Douglas used to do is he had all his father's laughs with him too. It was like a keyboard. He was like playing an instrument. Mm-hmm. And he was very tasteful. And I said to him, so you got your dad's laughs on this? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, she's stomping the grapes. Lucy's stomping the grapes. He said, all right, I'll play it for you. There was the original laughs. And then I said, okay, when the chocolate's coming out on the belt, he goes, there's a special one there. There's someone in the audience who saw what was coming and did this. Uh-oh.
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay?
And he had it. And I said, can you put that there? And we put it in the show.
Well, that's our show. Thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp. Join the 2 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with a BetterHelp therapist. And remember, as a special offer to Giles Files listeners, you'll get 10% off of your first month if you use the code betterhelp.com/GilesFiles. That's betterhelp.com/GilesFiles. And a big thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring our podcast. Big thanks to the lovely and talented John Markus for a great Part 2 interview and for sharing some of his comedy knowledge with us. Note to our listeners, be sure to check out Part 1 of John's interview. It's from earlier this season. It's Episode 5, entitled John Markus, Pitmaster, and you'll learn all about his spicier side. And note to John, seriously, where is our brisket? Okay, we're still waiting. The Giles Files was created by Nancy Giles and Nancy Wyatt, produced, directed, and edited by Nancy Wyatt, and recorded at our studios in Weehawken, New Jersey. Be sure to check out the Giles Files on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And hey, write us a review. Tell us what you think. We want to hear from you. We'll be back soon with another episode of the Giles Files, okay?